Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. It's going to be another great day, and of course, very interesting topic as always. We're just going to give 1 minute for people to join in before we get started. Welcome, and make sure you invite your friends, your family, share the link if you haven't done so already. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let us also know where you are joining from and the ages of your children while we go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be discussing something very interesting as always. How you cannot teach your child everything because self-education is the way. We're going to find out some examples of how children typically teach themselves and why you might just be getting frustrated if you're trying to have this schedule where you want to explain everything to them and teach everything to them. So if you're just joining, my name is Nkem Sinachiago and I'm the founder of the Montessori Home Education Academy. Today, we're looking at self education and basically explaining how you cannot teach your child everything and why you need to learn about self education instead and follow the Montessori approach, of course. That's what we're all about here. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so that you can share your comments or questions because it's only open to channel subscribers. So if you've not done so, subscribe, like, share the link, invite people to join us. So I just wanted to get started by saying typically a child practices self-education. So by default, that's what they do. What most of the time our role in the children's lives is just to serve as a guide, right? Help them out just a little bit, as little as is needed or as much as is needed, and not to jump in and do everything for them or jump in and try to explain every single step to them. Ultimately, we give them the basics and then they run with it, they build on it, they multiply it. That's really how children work. And even to an extent, even adults, you'll find out that even if you're taking a program, if you're taking a course, nobody can really explain every single thing to you. What you're given is the basics of how something works. Of course, you may ask questions if you're not clear on certain things, but when you get that basics, you find out that this is how, okay, you can now expand on what you have learned. Hello, thank you, Fisaya, for joining. Good to see you. Welcome. I hope you've shared the link with somebody. So children basically, by their default setting, is really to teach themselves, and they do it one way or the other. Whether you're trying to help them or not, they are going to find a way to learn something or to teach themselves certain things. From 0 to 3, they are basically learning. That's the absorbent mind, right? 0 to 6, 0 to 3, they are learning unconsciously everything you put in their environment, whether they like it or not. From 3 to 6, they begin to make choices of, oh, I mean, I'm very much interested in this or interested in that. And they start going deeper and deeper into those things they're interested in. So you might find out that their questions may be tending towards a particular topic or particular areas of interest, right? So being aware of these things is usually very helpful for a parent, parent teacher, to be able to support their child adequately. Another thing to note is that children are constantly working on their own development. So we're going to share some examples of self-education to really tell you or to show you that this is not just an imaginary concept. Of course, this is one of the Montessori principles. This month in the Montessori Home Education Program, with the parents, we've been discussing the Montessori principles. There we have about 8. Of course, there are so many of them, but we're focusing on 8, and this is just one out of many, right? So just pay attention, and of course, you're going to get as much as you're able to. Make sure you have your notebooks to take notes. Don't just listen and be inspired without taking notes of what you want to do. Another thing to note before we go further into the topic is that observing the child, or even for older children, you can simply ask them what they are interested in, and that simple step of observing, little children to see what their interests are, or observing or asking the older ones, oh, what do you even like doing, for instance, right? What do you enjoy most at school? What's your favorite subject? What's your favorite thing to do at home? Where do you like going when we go outside, right? Some of those simple questions or observations can actually give you a hint to the kind of things that the child is willing to learn on their own. And then when you now give them just a little hint, you see they'll just take it from there and go so far, even beyond what you would have imagined or what you would have been able to teach them on your own. So, like I shared, we're going to look at some examples of self-education because I think the best way to explain what it means, the fact that you cannot teach your child everything, and understanding what self-education is by giving you real-life examples. So, the first one I have here is learning how to walk. How many of us taught our children how to walk? Right? So you can well put in the comments, oh, I showed my child how to walk. Let me know how you did it, or let us know how you did it, right? Of course, this is not with disregard to anybody that may be having challenges with walking. So this is just an example, of course, using some of the skills or some of the milestones that we see with the children, right? So a child that is walking, you may, if you try to think about it, how did they learn how to walk? Maybe you provided some guidance. Maybe when you saw them trying to stand, you started holding them up, some of those basic. But what you'll see is that you wouldn't be the one that will tell the child, okay, it's time to walk now, right? So that is one example of how children are constantly working on their own development as they get to a particular stage. Their inner self, their nature, who they are, right? Their spirit, soul, and body is pushing them to do what they need to do part time. So that is why when you observe, you will see what that next thing is. Of course, it's also very helpful to be generally aware of child development and expectations and milestones so that you know what to look out for. But sometimes, even when some things are not necessarily written in black and white that this is what to expect, if you look at your own child that you have, you will see certain things. So learning how to walk, how do they lift their legs? Are you going to you might be able to guide the child a bit, like, oh, trying to make them to come to you without falling or something like that, trying to encourage them. But you will find out that you won't be, except someone is going through maybe physiotherapy, you will not start lifting their knee and their leg up and down and showing them, okay, this is how you put one foot forward and the other foot forward. They pick this, these are things that's like part of the innate nature that they develop, right? Sometimes it can also be contributed by seeing other people walking, right? If you, I think an example, for example, if for instance, is if a child maybe is growing up or having so many, and let's say someone born in the jungle, for instance, they may be actually likely to walk more like animals or be crawling until they start seeing that people actually stand upright. So there's also, of course, some input of seeing what is happening around them. And sometimes there is also a belief that those that have older siblings, because they see people that are their own size, right, doing these things, it even makes them realize how much more possible it is. But nobody really goes and starts teaching them, this is how you walk, this is how you move, da 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 da. Learning to talk is another one. Again, we understand that yes, there might be speech delays or speech challenges. Um, but in general, how children learn to form words, how they learn language, is it can look almost mysterious sometimes because you cannot really teach them everything and say, now talk to me, or this is what you do, or this is what you say, right? There might be some guidance here and there. Them watching you, watching how your mouth is moving. Sometimes if you have, very little ones, you see how they're just looking at your mouth because they know the sound is coming from your mouth. They are watching how the shape it's making. Sometimes if a child is struggling to pronounce a word, you might actually try to encourage them, oh, look at my mouth, and then you form the shape, right? They're looking at you. But on a regular note or regular basis, they are looking at you, they are listening, and somehow they know how to be able to pronounce these words and they start speaking language. Hello, Henrietta. Thank you for joining us. Good evening. Um, so they look at your mouth, they hear the words, they are able to see that, okay, maybe whenever we're in a particular place, they hear this particular name. If they see a dog, if they see a cat, and today they see a cat in the house and they hear the word cat, tomorrow they see it outside, they hear someone else say it. Before you know it, they're connecting the two. Another good example I like to share is when our first daughter was younger. So she had a cup that's her favorite cup for drinking tea or milk and some chocolate milk or something of that nature. So we called it her teacup, right? Or she called it her teacup. And then one time she was now trying to ask for a different cup, the one she used for drinking water. I think we heard her saying, oh, she wants her water cup. And at first it was puzzling, which one is water cup? Because we don't typically say, the only one we really give the name is teacup, right? But you don't have juice cup, water cup, that cup, that cup. But she had somehow deduced that, okay, this cup, she uses this other one for drinking tea, for drinking beverage, whatever it is, and this other one she uses it for drinking water. So by the time she had started speaking and was trying to ask, what she asked for was her water cup, right? So before even trying to think of correcting, you actually need to stop and think, how are they analyzing? How has their brain processed a certain thing to come up with the idea that this cup is a water cup and this one is a tea cup? So that is basically combining language, right, based on the things that they are picking from here and there and how they now formulate their own language. They formulate, of course, the language of the place where they are growing up in, right? Learning to read is another example of self-education because yes, quite all right. You learn the letter sounds, you try to guide them on blending, but you find out that once they get the general picture, they can take off on their own. You cannot teach them to read every word. So that's why the topic says you can't teach your child everything. If you expect that you're going to teach them, even sometimes the rules of, when you're learning how to read, at some point you will learn the basics, but then you will now start going into, oh, Whenever you see something like this, you do this. Whenever you see that, you do. There are some you have to explain to them, but there are some you find they just pick it on their own. They realize that, okay, when I saw this kind of word, this is how it sounded. So this other one by default sounds like this. So there might be a few corrections here and there. But ultimately, you will find out that your role as a parent, as a teacher, is to just provide that guidance, that's little insight, that little push. Sometimes they'll be the ones to even come to you. You'll find out that they are trying to learn something, and then you just need a little hint here and there, and they take it from there. But if you're not aware that this is how they actually like to learn as children, because of their natural curiosity, their natural creativity to be able to multiply what you have given them, you may find yourself getting frustrated trying to see when you're going to plan out this whole lesson for them or this whole lecture, or feeling the need that they need extra lessons with extra teachers for extra things, keeping them busy with over academic things that they don't really need, when all they need to do is just get some basics and play. So, like for the 0 to 3, 0 to 6 year old, if you're even doing any form of homeschooling or even just home support, let's say they're going to kindergarten or they're in preschool or somewhere, and you just want to have some little things to touch up with them at home, you find out that the one-on-one time you need with them for explaining any concept is just a few minutes, sometimes 10, 15 minutes, highest 30 minutes. If, for instance, like if for any reason it is so detailed or so engaging, but you need to make sure that you're not just talking for so long. It doesn't take that long, just a few minutes a day. You show them a concept, you step back. You show an example, you step back and let them explore, let them discover. Because when they explore and discover for themselves, this is how they learn a lot and they learn better. Even learning to write, of course, you might show some guidance here and there, but ultimately, letters are made up of curves and lines. And when they're able to learn how to move their hand around in that format, they can form any letter that they want, right? Even when they start learning a different language. Another example I have, so I have about seven, 8 examples, right? So the whole essence is when we know that self-education is the norm, then we will now begin to talk about how do you support this self-education in your own home so that it's easy for you. You don't have to feel like you need to entertain your child all the time or teach them all the time. What you need to do is set up certain things, right? So learning to add and subtract numbers is another example. Of course, you would show them the basic concept of addition, right? When you have one thing and you have another thing and you put them together, you have something else, right? Of course, with mathematics, you have maybe a cumulative number or a summation. With chemistry, you might have a different product altogether. So, learning to add and subtract things, you give them the basics, they move on with it. As long as you introduce it at the right time when they are interested or when they are potentially primed, sensitive periods, of course, is one of the key things that you would know as a prepared adult who is attending Montessori trainings. If you're part of our home education program, of course, you would definitely understand that better. Or if you're familiar with the Montessori approach, you know that sensitive periods are so valuable and so key because at that time, the child is ready to learn a particular concept and learn it so easily that you just really need to just, light the spark, and it just turns into flames because of how much they're able to run with the little information and support you've provided for them. Another very good example of self education is learning colors. Now, you might feel like, oh, you've taught your child colors or they've learned colors somewhere. They know red, yellow, blue, green, purple, pink, whatever it is. But then who is it that now explains to the child that, okay, if you might have dark blue, light blue, when you're teaching them colors or when you're showing them wherever they're learning it, nobody really goes ahead to show them 100 shades of blue for them to now know that this is all blue. Most of the time we just show them one of each color, and then the next thing, if you bring a different shade, they can still tell you this is also blue, this is also blue. If it is maybe one of all those combos that maybe it's looking too much like two colors, that may be where they will get a little confused, right? But that will take practice, of course, when they build their visual discrimination by being able to practice some arts, arts activities and so on. However, the actual differentiation of shades for them to know that this is dark blue is blue, light blue is blue, this shade is blue, navy blue, all the different kinds of blue. They might not know the individual names, right? But they would know that this is all blue. They will know that this is all red or reddish. They will know this is yellow, yellowish, right? So who teaches them all these things? The brain just picks some of the basic things it needs to pick, especially as a child with the absorbent mind, and it really literally multiplies it until you say otherwise, right? So they pick one thing, they store it, the brain categorizes and stores it as this information, that information, and they pick on it as they need. And whenever they are faced with something similar, it's almost like a program, right, that is running. It just says, oh, I've encountered something like this before, it is probably that. If you now say, oh, this one is different, then the brain learns that that is what is different. but basically they have already taught themselves as much as they need per time. Um, learning their faith is another example. So for us, we're Catholic, and I think we're reading the some Bible stories over time. And my daughter was very fascinated with the story of Jonah, where he was swallowed by the whale and was in the belly of the whale for 3 days, right? So she has asked for that story many times, and then I think at the point of some other time we're now reading a different story, a Bible story again, and we talked about how Jesus died and then rose after 3 days. And then she just suddenly paused and said, "Oh, just like Jonah was in the belly of the whale for 3 days." Like I was dumbfounded, right? Because it was surprising, like how the stories were not even told maybe so close together and everything. So how did she connect? Maybe she just connected the 3 days. So anytime you give them a little information, they store it, they link it, they are connecting it. So you find out that your work, you cannot really teach them everything. You cannot really explain everything to them. But if you're trying to build their faith, if you're trying to build their knowledge, if you're trying to do whatever it is you're trying to, your goal is for the child, what they really need is just a little bit here and there, and then consistency and support, right? So, um, yeah, so all those examples, I think hopefully you understand right now what I'm talking about, that self education is the norm for the child. That is their default. In fact, the more we try to interfere and overteach them, the more they tend to pull back, right? That's why at this age, especially 0 to 6, you don't want to be so academic or so focused on this is the target, you need to finish X, Y, Z. Because when you start coming at it from that point, you might actually be tampering with their love of learning. Of course, if you've been following us, you know that our goal is to foster the love of learning so that children can teach themselves. When we tamper with this love of learning by quizzing them all up and down, what is this? What is that? That maybe you're trying to compare with somebody that you saw somewhere that was answering certain questions and you want to see if your child is also a genius, and then you're quizzing, quizzing, quizzing. Before you know it, they're just losing interest. They are just wondering, is the purpose of, like, I want to learn this thing on my own. You don't even have to ask me for me to learn it. But when you just quiz, 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 and maybe you ask them 5 things that they don't know, then they start wondering, is something wrong with them, right? Meanwhile, the things that they know, they want to learn about, you may not even be aware because you have not been able to observe them. You're not familiar with what they should know per time, right? So, um, so I think, yeah, that's hopefully that really clarifies some of the things what self-education really means. Now the next half of this session we're going to be talking about what are the requirements for self-education. Okay, so now you've learned that self-education is a thing. How can you help your child to teach themselves? Do you find out that they're maybe asking you what's the next step for everything? That it looks like maybe they're not able to take some initiative, or they're not able to do some certain things on their own or learn on their own, and maybe you have to constantly supervise. If you find out that you're in that position where you're constantly, on their neck and sitting to make sure that they do a certain thing, there might be a few things involved. It's possible that you are pushing a particular activity or knowledge that is not relevant for them at that point in time. So imagine that a baby who is not yet able to sit up, uh, maybe they are still developing neck support and so on. But then you're just saying, "Oh, I need this baby to start sitting down." Then you're propping them up. Of course, they're going to be falling left and right. You're going to be getting frustrated because you heard that Mr. This or Mrs. That, their own baby is already sitting down, right? Or if they're not ready to walk yet, and then you're trying to actively get them to walk, you're going to turn it into a chore that shouldn't even be in the first place. You understand? So what are the requirements that you need to be able to allow your child self-educate themselves the way that is natural for them and the way that is suitable for them? Remember, 0 to 6 is such an advantageous period of the absorbent mind where they can learn things easily and simply if we know the right time and if we know what to do. So I'm going to be sharing about five things or requirements, or not necessarily requirement, but ways to support self-education in your child, in your children, and at home. So the first one is the prepared adult. Of course, that is the first one. If you've been following us, you're probably familiar now with the prepared adults, the prepared environment. The prepared adult is basically someone who is familiar with the Montessori approach, because self-education, of course, is one of the Montessori principles. It does not mean it's not followed in some other practices, but just as a Montessori principle, self-education, a prepared adult will be aware of what self-education is in the first place, and then the prepared adult will have some of the basic knowledge to be able to implement. So if you're following our videos, that is also part of the steps you're taking to become a prepared adult. If you're in our Montessori home education program, that is even a bigger step because now you're following a curriculum. You know what to teach per time, and you have a guideline to follow, even when you can't come up with certain things on your own. And beyond knowledge, of course, implementation is key. As a prepared adult, you know that the smallest implementation, is better than the biggest motivation. You might watch this and be so inspired and say, "Oh, wow, wow, wow." Someone said, "Wow, wow," like an ambulance or something, right? You might just be saying, "Wow, wow, wow." But if you don't do anything, if you don't do even one thing, like even half a thing about all the wows and all the motivation, then it's almost like there's not much benefit. In fact, it might just put you under more stress and tension, because now you have this extra information, but you don't know how to go about implementing it. So what you should do is, whenever you hear something, if you hear that thing that struck you, you just take note of it and ask yourself, how can I apply this starting from today? Don't pick the one that you're going to start planning for 10 years from now or 1 year. There's not that much time, right? They are growing so fast. Pick one thing that you can do today. When you hear it, just say, oh, this one applies to my child in this way. I'm going to change XYZ. And even if I have a long-term plan, I can start changing this from today. Another way is learning about basic child development and the supporting details that you need to be able to help the child with self-education. And then even better, right? You have the opportunity to join our self-paced program. So of course, we started the live program that runs from January to December. We started it in January, but now we've opened up the self-paced program where you can join. The minimum you can do is 3 months per time, a 3 month subscription, and you get access to the Montessori principles and all the other subject areas as they are released. Now, one thing I've noticed is that in the whole process of becoming a prepared adult, there might be that tendency to just want to know how to do one particular thing, like, oh, my child just needs to know how to do mathematics. They are struggling with math, they just need to learn math. I want to go straight and start doing mathematics. Or, oh, they're struggling with reading and writing. I want them to just learn reading and writing. I don't need any other thing you want to tell me. And the truth is that the Montessori approach does not work that way, because the whole focus of the Montessori approach is to develop the whole child. And what happens most times when parents are focusing on just one area or the other, either because they feel the child is struggling or because they feel that that is the only area that is important, what happens most times is that the parent puts the child under unnecessary pressure, which now takes away from the natural learning that the child would have done. So if you just go and you now dive into just one subject area, you're going to find out that in a short time you'll probably say, oh, this is not working, this is Montessori scam, right? So that's why we don't even right now really offer just one subject per time. You have to start from the Montessori principles, because if you don't know the basics, so like I said, this self-education is just one out of many principles that we have discussed this month in the Montessori home education program. And if you don't know something like that, or if you don't know the sensitive periods, then you're going to be trying to maybe force maths down the throat of your child, or force reading down the throat, and you will not see results. That's just the truth. You both get frustrated. Um, Again, this is not to say Montessori is the only approach, but the truth is that if you have been drawn to the Montessori approach because you've seen or you've heard that it works, or you've seen, some sample videos, some sample results from people, and you want to take advantage of it, then just know that you cannot just dive straight into one subject or the other. You must start from the Montessori principles, from the foundation and from the basics, and you must have that holistic picture to develop the whole child. Don't be trying to just make your child an expert in one thing or the other. It is too soon for all that expertise. When they have interest, of course, you build on it. Welcome, Perpetua. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you're enjoying the session. Please make sure, if you haven't already subscribed, if you haven't liked this video, if you haven't shared it, please take a second now and do so. Invite your friends to join us as we discuss um, requirements for self-education, or how to support self-education in your home and with your children. So we have the self-paced program available. If you're interested, check the video description. The second requirement, or supporting item for self-education in your home, is the prepared environment. Prepared adult, prepared environment. You hear it over and over again in any Montessori approach or discussion, because without those two things, but most importantly, without the prepared adult, because if you have a prepared adult, even in the desert, even in the bush, they would know what to do with a particular child and how to teach them, right? So the prepared environment is an extra step. Being able to set up your environment in a way that works for the child. So in our guide, the prepared environment, which by the way is now in hard copy, I'm excited to share that. So for those of us that are interested, in this guide, we shared about how you can support your child's independence at home. I'll give a very practical example. Maybe your child is always asking for water. That's one of the common ones. Oh, water, 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 water. And each time you're just getting up to get the water for them. Just a simple change, for instance, like having a small jug available or having a small dispenser or something. Oh, again, I didn't bring it by the side here. We have a dispenser that we got where you can just lift the lever like a tap or push. You can push and water comes out. There's a small bowl underneath to collect the water. And the children can get this water for themselves. So it's not like they just like to disturb you, but you have not realized that you could actually make a little change here and there to help them do it by themselves, right? And how do you even know what they can do by themselves? Sometimes we find ourselves asking questions like, at what age can a child do this? At what age can a child do that? If you have that will be in the next step anyways. If you've been able to learn how to observe your children, you would know actually at what age they can do certain things by seeing the skills that they have, right? So in the prepared environment guide, we also talk about how to prepare the environment to support self-education. I'm going to share some more examples with us. We also have about 50 plus activities in different Montessori subject areas. And the good thing is that if you get the hard copy guide, because we also had the two-in-one soft copy guides, if you get the hard copy on Amazon, just send a receipt to my email. The contact details are in the book as well. You will equally get free soft copy of the sensitive periods guide and workbook. Now, why is it helpful? When you go through these materials and you fill out the simple worksheet, it's very simple questions. Some of us that are in the home education program can probably testify to this, that just by a couple of questions here and there, you stop, you think, and you find solutions all by yourself. You don't even need any special consultation and everything, because the power really is in the hands of the parents who has learned some very basic information on how they can apply and help their own children. Um, so that's about that. Again, in the video description, you'll see the link if you're interested. So I wanted to just share some real life examples of how we practice self-education at home. In the background we have here, you can probably see these Igbo alphabets. You may have seen it in some of our videos. And these are the Igbo flashcards. Now, something like this, self-education would mean I wouldn't have to come every day and start teaching my child, oh, A, B, C, D, or I have to tell them which letter is this? Can you remember this? Can you recognize that? I would simply keep like a box of these flashcards, which you also get when you buy the Igbo book, and it has a tape at the back. So you pick it up, you can paste it. A child will typically be interested in doing this if they're already showing interest in language. And it's like play for them. You just put it by the side, you can be doing what you're doing, and they're sticking it on the wall, right? This is a laminated copy of the same flashcards. So they will just stick it. As they are doing it, they are matching the letters, and they are seeing, they are able to realize that okay, this is equal to this and this is equal to that. And if you joined our video where we talked about Montessori math and cognitive development at home, you will realize that any activity where a child gets to pair items together or to match items together and know that okay, this is equal to this, that is a cognitive development activity going on. Even though it is language, cognitive development is also happening, right? Another so um, sometimes I might have these flashcards available for them to easily pick up and stick, or I might even just provide the book. The book might be in a basket for them, and they would now pick up and try to find the corresponding letters and just match it. Right. So that is one example of me after we've read the book one or two times, and I don't want to have to keep reading it to them all the time and trying to teach them every second. I just put it by the side. When they stumble on it and they pick interest, they start practicing on their own and they start teaching themselves. That is self-education. Another example, so that's like a language example, even though with Igbo alphabets, you can do it with English alphabets, of course. Now, this example, let me remove these other small ones here. Okay, so this is an example of something I might leave for my 4-year-old to discover. It's a magnetic whiteboard. It has two sides, white and green/blackboard. So in our living room, for instance, I could put this, just leave it like that, without the answer, obviously here. Is the camera showing? Okay. So because she's been very interested in addition, and I know she's been very interested because of the kind of questions she's been asking, some things she's been doing, and some observations I've been making on our observation journal. So if I put this for her, 1 plus 2, and she sees these dots, we've practiced some things before. So she might just say, oh, 1 plus 2. And then she might put this 1 and then put, these are magnetic numbers or stickers. 1 plus 2. So she'll count 1, 2, 3. And then we have okay, I have a collection of magnetic numbers here. So because she has counted 1 plus 2 and she knows that it's 3, she would now bring this and put it here. Trust me, it may look like, oh, how would they really know that? Yes, they will actually know that if you've had one or two samples or you've practiced once or twice with them. The good thing now is that you don't have to be the one to now set exam for them or set questions for them. On her own, for instance, because she's been showing that interest in addition, she can now decide to even change the equation. So instead of 1 plus 2, she may decide to do 1 plus 3 to figure out what the answer would be. And then she'll put this and she'll put 1, 2, 3 and count it. And then she'll be excited to say, oh, the answer is 4. Maybe she'll now look for the sticker for 4. Let me find that here. So you find out that the child doesn't even need to be actively writing yet to be able to do addition if they're already interested in it. And they can even further on add more dots here to count. You don't even have to use sticky dots. You can use beads. Of course, if you have an understanding of control of error, which is a different topic altogether, you will know how to set this up. But basically, I can tell you for sure that if I put this in our living room with the container of numbers for her to access, um, access, form the equations by herself, check what questions she asks. Like she'll basically be the one asking herself questions and answering the questions on her own. And she'll be more interested in learning this than if I sit her down and say, okay, today we are going to finish 10 numbers or 10 addition, 10 subtraction. She can do this for as long as she wants. A child who is interested in math, who is interested in addition, subtraction at this point, you set these things up for them and they'll do it and do it and they'll be excited by themselves, right? You don't have to actively sit down and be turning it into a very serious thing that would now put unnecessary stress and remove the joy of learning, which they already had on their own, right? So that is why if you're not familiar with self-education, you really want to start paying attention today. If you're not familiar with the prepared environment, you also want to learn about it. And sensitive periods. We know, for example, mathematics, the sensitive period for maths is from 4 to 6 years. So it means that at that age period, at that age window, they're actually very primed to learn these things easily. All of course, all things being equal. But they begin to show this interest around that age. It might be a little sooner or something, but that's a 2 year window when they are typically primed to learn, let's say, mathematics. Language also has its own for reading, for writing. These are all things you'll find in the sensitive period guide and also in the workbook. Another example I wanted to share with us is so this is something from practical life. Now, I was making an observation I was using the part of the Montessori home education program because I'm also doing the program myself, even though I'm running it. And I had written in the journal that, okay, I noticed that after using the washroom, there seems to be a tendency where they forget to wash their hands or they forget to wash with soap. So I realized that yes, it looks like they've learned toileting, they've learned the whole potty process, but maybe something is missing, right? So instead of continuously asking, "Have you washed your hands? Did you use soap today?" And now I wrote in the because in the journal you would write, "Okay, what did you observe?" And then I wrote, there's a place that you take note of next steps. So I wrote print the toileting steps chart. So that was how I actually came up with the idea to make this chart that we're going to now put in the toilet. But apart from putting this chart in the toilet in the bathroom, I decided that I was also going to make it an activity. And the activity, I didn't say, ring the bell, come, let us do this activity. I simply pasted this on the wall. Again, this is laminated. This is painter's tape just rolled up so that you can stick it on the wall. Most times it wouldn't. The idea of painter's tape is that it doesn't peel off the paint, right? So if, for example, I put this on the wall and I printed 2 copies of it, right? So you have this. What happens is that now someone can, either of them, whether the 2 year old or the 4 year old, any age, as long as they can pick something and they can recognize images, they can probably do this activity. So they can pick it and then they will match the activities. By the time they do this multiple times, what will happen? They would now start realizing that these are the steps that are followed. And when this is in the bathroom, they'll remember that, okay, I can even just ask, what is next? What is next, right? And they'll know that you don't just wash your hands, you wash it with soap. So you're doing it as both a real life activity, something that is fun, and at the same time, remember we are matching things again. So that is a cognitive development activity, that is practical life, and that is language learning for the child that has started to read. right? Wash hands with soap. And they just love looking at the pictures. They are colorful and everything. So that is another example of self-education. So instead of me trying to sit down with them and teach them the steps every time, I just paste it on the wall. You go and teach yourself, right? As long as it is something that they are interested in. Okay, no problem for Adeton. Thank you for joining. As long as it's something that they're interested in, you will find out that they will gravitate towards it. I think, do I have another example to share with us on self-education? Okay, I have one more here. So learning Bible verses, for instance, is one of the things that we do. And sometimes the way we do it, we don't just keep reciting it over and over again. Okay, come and practice your verses. What we do is simply pasting something like this in their room, maybe by the side of their bed or in the living room somewhere that it looks nice. And then um, for our daughter, older daughter that is reading, she might just pass by and read it, right? And now she can just say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then the younger one who is not yet reading, because she has also heard the older one read it a number of times, she equally knows the same verse, right? I don't remember, apart from reading it with them once or twice, I don't remember trying to go through it with them and say, come and learn this now. Da, 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 da. I just made something colorful, pasted it on the wall where they can see it, and that is it, right? So it's all about knowing what they are interested in. So that will now take us to the third point, which is observation, which is the third point for helping self-education to take place in your house. If, as the adult, you're able to observe your child, it's not just seeing your child, you have to actively observe them, take notes in your journal, and see what are they interested in, what are they doing repeatedly. I say that I tell parents that the skill of observation is like your own superpower, right? We've heard that, oh, young children, they learn things quickly, they learn things easily. That is their own superpower as 0 to 6 year old. But you, as a parent, your own power is being able to observe them and being able to see that thing that they are doing that they may not even realize that this is an interest that they have, but you just see them doing it a lot of times, or you see them doing it or showing so much interest in it. And then you know there are sensitive periods as well. So observation is very key, and not just observing and seeing and storing it in your mind. Trust me, if you observe today, observe tomorrow, you just store it in your head. By the next week, you're going to forget, and then tomorrow you're wondering, oh, what can I do to keep them busy? They are not they are bored. They are just making noise. They're distracting everybody, doing that, that, that. That. Meanwhile, if you have your journal, that is literally your own list of activities filled up in that journal, ready to go at any point in time. Yes, it is really the parent's superpower, the skill of observation. Now, the fourth point that helps with supporting self-education is reading skills. Now, reading skills slash books. So for the child to be able to, when a child learns how to read, it actually opens another, in fact, a whole new set of doors for the child. And that's why sometimes when we see ourselves pushing for trying to get our children to learn how to read, we need to ask ourselves, what is our real motivation? Because if your goal is just, it is time, they need to learn, right? You might not be motivated by the right reasons or the right or at the right time. And again, if you approach it from that point of pressure timeline, you may not get it right, and you might end up frustrating the child, frustrating yourself. However, the skill of reading is actually very valuable when it comes to self-education. It opens new doors for the child and allows them to directly instruct themselves, directly teach themselves. In fact, there was where's okay, do I have there was an activity that I set up at some point for our daughter. I think it was a math activity. I was just trying to find the manual. Okay, I have it here. Yes, so we have these manuals from North American Montessori Center, and one of the activities was to use the golden beads. So golden beads are Montessori math materials, and to arrange it in a particular way. So this was during her quiet time, and me personally, I wanted to have a nap at that time. So I said, you know what, I can't even show her this activity right now, but I know she's interested. So I gave her the material, and then I opened the manual to the page that talked about the activity. And I think I basically showed her a picture of where somebody else was arranging that activity, and there were some instructions there. And so she was able to now maybe read the instructions herself or follow the steps, right? So you will now find out that even the level of teaching you even have to do will even be reducing more when they start reading. So that's why, yes, it's an advantage, but no, it's not something you should now start pushing and forcing. There's an optimum or a prime time to teach it. There is a way to go about it, which we normally address in our language curriculum. So for those in the program, that's coming up next month, February. I know we've been looking forward to it. But there are some simple steps you follow to teach your child to learn how to read or to help them. It's not like you can teach them everything, of course, but some basics here and there, and then how to support that skill. But when they do learn how to read, it really helps them to open an entire set of new doors, where you can now say, okay, they're interested in this topic. You just get a book on that topic. Like we like the National Geographic kids books. They're usually it's very simple text with a lot of real life pictures that the child can use. Sometimes my daughter would ask, "Oh, how does this work or how does that work?" We have the book. You visit the book yourself and come and tell me how it works actually, because it's not even me that has to answer that question all the time, right? So another common saying is that when children learn to read at the right time, while others might be busy learning how to read, they are reading to learn. And there's also that tendency that if they learn under low pressure and at the right time, then there will also be that love for reading generally, because they're not seeing it as work. They are reading because they want to know something. Like if I'm asked, oh, how does this work? And I say, this book answers the question. Can you read it and tell me? Then you see them going to read because they want to learn something, not because they are trying to practice their reading skills and so on and so forth, right? So reading skills is very valuable. And even if your child is not able to read yet, having books is also something that is very helpful. Like even our 2-year-old, for instance, we have some nice picture books for her that she can look at, and she can still teach herself certain things. She can see, like if we have a picture book of farm animals, the National Geographic kids book, and it shows what a real pig looks like. The cartoonish pig a lot of times can look so funny, and when you now see a real pig, you'll be wondering which one is real, which one is fake, whether the cartoon is even the real thing, right? Or if you see, maybe you see a cat that is walking in some books. So that's why even the kind of books that you choose, you should be very selective about it. Avoid cartoonish things, especially for your 0 to 3. From 3 to 6, they can begin to differentiate, reality from fiction. But as much as possible, even your 3 to 6-year-old still wants to see real life things, because this is what keeps them in touch with what is real. And then they can begin to now build their imagination on that. They can build their creativity on what is real and not what is imaginary. So books and the ability to read is a very good way to foster that skill of self-education. And then the fifth and last point for supporting self-education is you need to foster the love of learning. How do you foster the love of learning? We have a video on that, how to build the love of learning. In fact, 2 videos actually from last year. How do you build the love of learning in your children? One of them is stop quizzing them. Stop quizzing. Life is not an exam. The goal of education is to prepare children for life and not for exams and assessments. If you find that you're constantly worried about them passing one exam or the other, it is time to step back and ask yourself, what do they really need to learn at this point in time? What is their goal? What is their interest? If you're not able to focus on building that their interest in reading, for instance, or building their interest in writing for the actual reasons, like maybe if you're going to a store, you can decide that you want to write the grocery list. Now, you as the adult even has to be writing, because if they don't see you writing, and then it's only you monitoring them and asking them, have you written your 1,000 words today? Then they're going to just be seeing it as work, 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 right? So you want to make sure that you are building the love of learning in your children, and really that is what the Montessori approach is all about. If you're familiar with it, if you're also following the conference, we have the Montessori conference currently ongoing, Childhood Potential Conference. I'll share the link in the chat. I don't think I have it in the video description. But for those of us that are participating, you will know that this is really what Montessori is all about. It's about building the love of learning in children and trying to avoid this whole push for exams, and assessments. This is not what makes a man or what makes a woman. This is not what builds people. Exams is not what builds people. It is what they learn, and even better, what they learn willingly. At this early age, when they are learning through play, when they are learning from creativity, when their brain is just doing signs and wonders, right, with the right environment. So I think those are the five major areas. And if there are any questions, oh yes, very very true, Perpetua. The goal of education is to prepare children for life and not for exams. We need to really make a shift from that whole exam drive. Some of us, even as adults, we have found ourselves so focused on exams that when there is no exam, we're not interested in learning anything. It's like, please leave me. I have done my own, all this learning, all this reading. I'm all done with it, right? We need to build the love of learning in children. So that is very true. So I think we're done for today. If you have any questions, feel free. If you if you haven't joined our free Montessori community on WhatsApp, just click the video description. You'll see it all there. If you still want to join our self-paced home education program that is ongoing, The first 3 months already, we have the Montessori principles there, and you also have the language curriculum where your child, you see how your child actually learns to read and learns to write, and how a child builds language. What I love about the Montessori language curriculum is that you don't just learn, let's say, one language, you don't just learn English language, you learn how to actually apply it to whatever language it is your child is learning. Of course, we know that we are proponents of bilingualism, multilingualism, especially for your 0 to 6 year old. This is the best time. So if you're interested in any of these things, the video description has our contact details and whatever you need. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, I really want to thank you all for being here. Um, I love connecting with you all parents, and I really love seeing the drive, right, for us to be able to support our children, because ultimately that is the goal. I remember the first time I heard about Montessori, in my mind I was like, everybody needs to hear about this, because it is really a very good way to simplify this whole process of education that has somehow turned into a almost like a do or die affair sometimes. And things, a lot of pressure and stress is starting earlier and earlier and earlier on for our children, and they're not learning the things they need to learn. They're not playing the way they should. They're not outside as long as they should, because we are so focused on one having one lesson teacher or the other for them to teach all the who knows what, right? So thank you very much for committing to this. Okay, the link for the self-paced learning package, it's in the video description. Let me just copy it out and also share it with us here. Okay, just a second, please. Control C. Okay, so I just put it in the chat as well if you're interested. But once the video ends, just click on video description. You'll see a lot of links there to our books, the prepared environment guide, and the WhatsApp community, whatever it is that you're looking for. And thank you so much, everyone. I really don't take it for granted you joining us here, and share the link with your friends and your family. And I hope to see you all again next week. If you're not part of the Montessori conference, I think you'll benefit a lot from it. It's from Monday to Friday, so it's ending this Friday. You can still sign up and get the benefits of that as well. Thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week. You're welcome, Fisaya.